and primarily who is already here, that we forget why we're here in the first place, which is to reach those who are not here, that target audience, the target audience that God has sent us to. He said, go into the world. And how do they see us is the question, would only be answered by someone who's not us. You can't ask a youth who's been coming to your church or is in your youth group, hey, what do you think we need to change to reach new people? Because he's going to say, or she's going to say, I think we're good. We're doing good. Or they're going to say, oh, maybe we should do this. But it's not what we're trying to do. So what we have to do is ask somebody. Look into your circle, like someone outside of church, someone outside who doesn't go to church or is not per se religious, if we want to call it that, Christian. But hey, what would make you come to church? What is it that would change your mind about church, your perception about church? And it's about having an open ear and an open mind, because sometimes we get so locked up in, people have to come to church. You have to love God. If you don't love God, they're going to tell you things that you probably don't like to hear. I don't believe in God. And then we have that inclination to start defending God, like God needs our defense. No, you have to understand that God, just listen to them. Okay, all right, so that's fine. You don't believe in God, it's fine. But how can we get you to just come? It's not just about God. We want you to just see what we're about, fellowship with us. There's cool people there. What is it that would make, and just have an open mind and understand an outsider perspective, rather than just, okay, what are we doing for ourselves, is what I would say to that question.
Yeah, I think I just want to add on first to what Jay said. Many times we know the why in the beginning, but somewhere along the way we forget about it, and it's okay to come back to it. It's okay, you get a spiritual slap to the face, and it's okay, I remember now what it is. And then to what Abby was saying, I think so many times we forget that it's not about filling up our church with other church people. All right, it's about filling up our church with people that are broken, people that are hurting, people that need Jesus. All right, many people that there's a pastor that he says, I want my church to be the kind of church that you can't leave your purse there because somebody will come and take it. Those are the kind of people that we should be aiming at for church. So that's.
I think we need to be intentional with the why. I feel like if we don't, as a part of leadership, if we're not identifying the why and we're not being intentional in teaching the why to other people, it's not going to happen. So if we are focused on reaching the lost, we need to start creating a culture of that. So if we're not being intentional about it, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I think intentionality begins with you as the leader, in the sense of, I did this one time and I was shocked, and even me as a pastor right now, I was challenged, and I was like, wow, I need to change this. If we look around our friendship circle or our circle of community, are there non-believers in it? Do you have a circle? Do you have a network? Do you have a connection to non-believers? If you don't, if your circle is just believers, if your circle is just church people, if your circle is just worship leaders or people who think like you, then you might need to look at changing that or need to pray about it. Because when we look at Jesus, he was never with people who thought like him. He was always with people on the other side, and that's why he was always criticized. Why are you eating with them? I feel like Jesus would ask them, why aren't you?
Right.
I'm sorry. Sometimes my Jesus gets a little ghetto.
I think that's important, because I don't know if you're like me, but I actually heard the opposite growing up. I was told, you can't be with the world and you can't be with people that are worldly and things like that. And that's why I wanted to ask you, I want you to elaborate on the difference of those things, or did we get it wrong, or talk a little bit more about that.
I think it was well intentioned, but it just grew like Larry was talking about earlier. Over time, it just evolved into something that it shouldn't have, which is what happened with the Pharisees. Like, they were doing it good based on scripture, but throughout the point they're like, nah, we need to be separated. We can't be with them. Like that wasn't the point of being separated. It was to be set apart, not separated.
Yeah.
We still got to be there. Jesus said in his prayer, John 17, he said, I don't pray that you take them out of the world. I pray that you protect them from the evil one. We're supposed to be in the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, going back to your question, was we'll use that verse, which I love, and I have a love-hate relationship with the verse. I'm sorry, I know I'm a pastor, but we're all candid here. It says, do not conform to the things of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I think we'll talk about that later on, but that's been so misinterpreted lately in the last years, because it's like, now we can't conform, we can't do the things of the world, we can't be with the world, and then it turns into we can't be seen with them.
So let me see if I can summarize this. What you're saying is, the problem isn't with who you surround yourself or who you don't surround yourself. It's who's influencing who. Right? So who's influencing who? So in the sense of, and I know some of us are probably youth leaders at our church. I know we got Angeles here who just took on the role of youth leader, which is awesome. And so when we're talking about more younger and impressionable youth, okay, that might be a safe way to tell them, hey, maybe you need to be influenced, so let's bring you around some believers. But as leaders, who we are all here, we need to have people in our circle who don't know Jesus. Right? Because God has called us to be the salt and light, the ones that are influencing and preserving the things that are good, not hiding and living in the shelter, right? Amen?
I think I just want to add something to it really quick. I was sharing last week with the youth. We're in a series right now, Friend of Sinners. And one of the things I said is kind of piggybacking what Pastor Abby said. He says how people get this verse and they twist it to their understanding or how they want to preach it and stuff like that. And there are so many people that are brought up. I was one of them. I'm set apart. I am not of this world. I can't associate myself with these people. That's the very reason why you're not going to change the world if you keep thinking like that. Ooh, that stings.
Let's end the conference right here.
That stings, but it's the truth. I mean, when you think about who you are today, who brought you to church? You didn't just randomly just walk into a church Sunday. No. Whether it was your mom, whether it was your sister, whether it was a friend that associated with you, all right? That's the very reason why you're here today. Yeah. And we are called to do the same. Yeah. Amen?
I think that one of the things too, answering the question, how does our church look to our target or outsiders? I think that a lot of times we have this church lingo that we have that no one understands.
Yeah.
It's called Christianese.
We're talking about breaking down walls, and we're talking about, revival nights and worship, and no one understands those words. Outsiders don't understand them. So when we're looking about breaking down walls, well, what are you going to think as an outsider? It's like, I don't want to go to that church. I want to die there, So I think that we just have to be intentional in projecting something that an outsider can understand. Another one of the things that I love about our church is that we're very intentional in telling people that we're just normal and that we're just like them. A lot of times people think that church is just like those people are holy. They're far. They're so far away from where I'm at. I have a friend who we're recently connecting with, and we're trying to influence him, and we're trying to get him to come to church. And one of the things that he was telling me, he's like, bro, church isn't for me. Like I'm not a saint, and if I go to church, it's gonna crash down because of all my sin. And I was like, bro, we're all like this. We're all sinners, and it's one of the things that then when we're so intentional on our values of like, hey, like we're just open, we're just honest. One of our values in our church is that we're honest. Yeah. And that's what I tell them. It's like, look, man, like one of the things that we value in our church is that we're just open, we're just honest. And if you were to come to my church, you would understand that you're just like every one of us sitting here. So if we start being intentional about that, creating that culture where we're like, hey, we're sinners just like you are, then it'll be easier for someone to come to church.
Hey, why did he just point at me?
Because you're a sinner. Because you are a sinner. Just like me.
Of all sinners.
Not me. No, okay. But so that's good. So we talked a little bit about the first thing. So how do we appear to the target, or how do we appear to the outsider, right? So, if I can sum it up, we need to keep them in mind when we're structuring our services, or the way that we speak, the language we use, and things that have to be not exclusive, but inclusive, right? So let's move on to the second topic, which has to do with the first one. It says, how are your target's needs being met? Okay? Because the reality is, we all have needs, right? But sometimes we're not aware of those needs. Okay? So 20 years ago back, people had this thing called religious obligation, right? So most people would tell you they are Christian. They'll tell you, we go to church every once in a while on Christmas and Easter, and we're Christian people. They'll tell you that. But what we need to get to is because you're offering them a church, but they think they're already Christians. So what is the need that you're providing for them, right? So there's a story actually I want to share in Scripture. It's the Samaritan woman. We've all heard this story before, right? So if we take Jesus as a model for the way that we do church, check this out. Jesus presents himself before a woman at a well. And he tells her, the first thing Jesus says to her, he says, can you give me a drink of water? So Jesus right there is already creating this relationship with her. It's kind of a small example of what Jesus did when he became man. He brought himself down to say, me, just like you, physically speaking, have needs, right? So Jesus related to her, and then what happened? She says, well, first of all, there's cultural issues. Why are you talking to me? All this. Then he tells her, well, if you knew who I was, and you knew the need that you have, which is thirst, then you would know that you need what I have, right? So check this out. She was already a religious woman. She was a Samaritan woman. And she even tries to get theological with Jesus, right? She's like, no, but see, us Samaritans, we worship on the mountain over here. Well, you guys believe worshiping God only happens in Jerusalem. She had religion. Most of the people you will talk to are already Christian. So what need do you have to bring them to your church? The reality is they don't need religion. And realistically, this might stink, they don't even need church. What they need is Jesus. And along with that, they need relationship. They need fellowship. And most importantly, the thing we were created for, they need love. And I'm sorry, I'm a firm believer, true love does not exist outside of Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So,
And building on that, it's very important that we don't, we have this inclination to say, hey, we got to bring people to church. We got to bring people to church. We got to bring people to church. Instead, we need to shift our focus and say, we need to bring people to Jesus. And when you say that, Jesus doesn't just meet at church. Because we have this perception. We have glasses on right now. Those of you who have glasses on right now, I'm not coming at you, but we all have glasses on right now. And hopefully, I'm about to blow your mind, because when I thought of this, it blew my mind, and it changed everything about how I do church and how we do church at where I'm at. But we tend to think about church being for God. And then we center everything about church. What is it that we have to do for God here? Worship is for God. The sermon is for God. The offering is for God. Everything about what we're doing right now, we do it under the lens of for God. Let me break the news to you softly. God doesn't need any of this. Church is not for God. Church is for people. Church is about God. You see, we sing about God and His love and His mercy and His grace. We preach about God and His forgiving love and how He's chasing us down and how He'll never relent. We give because God has already given to us. So if we shift our focus from doing church for God to doing church about God, and okay, we're meeting needs of people here now. Not the needs of God. God doesn't need my worship. He doesn't need my tithes. He doesn't need my offering. This is just a tool that God is using to reach people. Then I think our way of doing church is going to change. Because now we're not trying to please God and, without getting so deep into it, Jesus paying the price on the cross for us, and we have the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. God is already pleased with us because of Jesus. we're not trying to please God, we're trying to reach people. You see, Jesus here, he's already pleased with you, he's in you, you have the power, you have the Spirit, you're called to be a leader. Now go reach people. Now go, you've been commissioned, you've been sent. Let's not be so wrapped up on, okay, God, I'm here to do this for you. And then you forget about people now. Okay, God, you're here with me, let's go. Let's go.
So it's like when we go to church and we do all these things, we think we're pleasing God, but it's funny because God actually told us to do something, which is to go out and reach the world, and that would please Him.
That would please God.
Right? And so it's not to say, that God is unpleased when we go to church. I think He's pleased, but I think we have it backwards. We have to understand it, if I'm correct in what you're saying. The church doesn't belong to us for God. The church belongs to God for us.
Yes.
Right? Because that's a place where the body of Christ gets together and does what God asked us to do, which is reach the world.
Reach the world.
Reach the world.
That's good. And it's important to know that what God has called us to do, He's also empowered us to do it. And He never said that you were going to go do it alone. He said, I will always be with you, giving you the power, giving you the Spirit. And He's also going to surround you with the people that you need to do this with. So it's important to know that, no, you're not alone. It might be a daunting task. How can I reach people who outside? Like, it's hard. It is hard. But you're not alone.
I think that one of the things that I love about Journey and what you guys are doing is that as I was reading this question, it's you guys are meeting the needs of people. You're using strategies to bring people in, and you guys are doing tribe nights. And yesterday, for those of you guys that weren't here, they had a color bash it's color bash, right? Color Wars. That was amazing. But one of the things that I love that you guys did is that you still took some time to preach the gospel, and that's the most important thing. People come to church with spiritual needs, I remember when I was 17, my mom tried to commit suicide like 7 times, and in one of those times she just reached out to me and said, hey, just go to church, just go to a church and just get someone to pray for us and for the family. And I remember just being so desperate, and I went to a church, and I remember because my friend said, hey, let's go to this church, all these good-looking girls are there, it's going to be amazing. And there were a lot of good-looking girls there, but, I was going there with a spiritual need. I was desperate, and I needed something. I didn't know what I needed, but I needed something that was outside of anything that I could provide. So I remember going to that church, and they had, they had the strategies, right? They had a movie night and all this stuff, and everybody was having fun, but that's it, So then I'm there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm telling my friend, bro, we have to go, man. Like, let's get out of here, man. Like, let's go to this other church that I had an experience with when I was younger, and I said, let's go to that church. And I remember he was like, bro, why? This is fun. Like, we're here, we're watching movies, all that stuff, which, again, I don't have any problem with. But if we're not finishing off with that gospel message, which is what we need, all of it is in vain. So I remember going to that church, and after the service was done, I remember just seeing the youth pastor say, hey, I just need prayer. Can you guys just pray for my mom? And I remember just going there, and they're just praying, and it was amazing, and to this day, those experiences led up to me, coming to Christ. So I feel like we need to focus on the gospel message. Strategies are great, but we need to also implement that.
Yeah, which leads to the question, leads to the questioning, what can the church do differently today as far as changing their mentality or adapting to what is going on in our world today? And one of the interesting things about Jesus, going back to what you were saying, was Jesus, whenever he encountered someone, whenever he was brought someone sick, he did 2 things. The first thing was he fulfilled the need. Whether it was turning water into wine at a wedding, or healing the sick, or giving sight to the blind, he did that first, fulfilled the need. Then the second thing was he shared the gospel with them by saying, go and sin no more. You are forgiven. Bam, you're free of slave. He did those 2 things first. And I think that's what we need to do as a church, as leaders. We need to build our community, our churches, to do those two things. Obviously, we can't forgive sins, but we can point them to the one who can.
That's right.
So, what do people need today, above all else, right now, in our culture, in our society right now? What people need most of all is a place to belong. If we are not providing a place for people to belong to, then they're going to find another place to belong to. And believe me, there are a lot of places that they can go that will accept them just as they are. Which is funny, because that's what the church is supposed to be. You see, we have this perception that at church we got to be, cleaned up nice, suit and tie, dress, and all this stuff. And like the church is supposed to be the one place where everybody's broken. From the pastor down, everybody has to be broken. And if people come in through those doors and see unbroken people, they will leave and find broken people to relate to. So that's what people need most of today. Above all else, that's the water that we can offer them at the well. This is the well. Jesus is the water. I'm thirsty too. You're thirsty? Let's go drink together.
That was so good. Talking about belonging, Pastor, there's this story that I heard. You guys probably have all heard of this person, Ozzy Osbourne. You guys probably have even heard this story before.
Ooh, I'm Christian. I don't listen to that.
Ozzy Osbourne is known as everybody knows him. And pretty much there's a story of his life where he's in a very broken, dark place in his life. And in the corner of his house, there's a church. And his wife, he tells his wife, I don't know what to do. His wife tells him to go to church. He's like, I can't go to church. Look at who I am. Look at how I dress, which is honestly sad because unfortunately we have brought that up on ourselves, because of judging, whatever. But that's not the case. The point is, in this dark moment in his life, he's looking for something. And his wife tells him, go to church. He tells him, I can't. I'm wearing black, I have my nails painted, my hair is long, everything. She's like, just go as you are. He does. He sits down in one of the pews. It's weird to say pews, right? What is that? He sits down in one of the chairs, let's just say that. And within 5 minutes, the whole entire church just disappeared. They left. One of the deacons come up to him and they tell him, hey sir, I'm sorry, but you gotta leave. You've scared everybody off. And this was years ago. We see who Ozzy Osbourne is today. What would have been of his life if somebody would have been like, hey, I'm so happy you're here, man. Whatever it is that you need, I'm here to serve you. Right? What would have been, So that's so key, I think, in the whole belonging thing of the church. It's not just something cute. It's not a cliche to say. It's something that we should live and we should apply into our lives each and every day.
I think one of the things that Judah Smith, on one of his church values, he says that in his church you can belong before you believe. And that is just so amazing to be able to come to church, looking however you look, having whatever background you have, and you have that feeling and that sense of belonging. That's amazing.
It's deep because, I'm sorry, I won't say this and then I'm done for the day.
He means for the next 5 minutes.
Lecrae, he's a famous rapper, does good music. He just signed another artist to his label, and on the Instagram tweet, someone shared it. He shared it. He was like, "Hey, welcome to the team. We're gonna do great things together." Apparently, someone commented on the thing and says, "This doesn't sound like Christian music."